Coming up in today's newscast, new political parties and alliances are announced as the Israeli April elections draw closer. Prime Minister Netanyahu arrives in Brazil for a landmark visit, and an Israeli woman finds a pair of Roman-era busts while out for a stroll with her husband. The main story on everyone's mind today is the surprise announcement Saturday evening by Jewish Home Party leader Naftali Bennett and his number two, Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked, of the establishment of their new party called Hayamin Hadash, or the New Right. The two ministers announced their decision to break away from the nationalist religious Jewish Home Party, which Bennett has led since 2012, to instead aspire to bringing both non-religious and religious groups together under one right-wing political party as equal partners. At a press conference, both ministers explained that the Jewish Home, after its many achievements, had lost its influence and peaked. Bennett said, quote, "We and the right must no longer be held captive by one man," referring to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In return, the new party has already faced a wave of criticism from the Likud and other right-wing parties, however, claiming that they are splitting votes on the right. Likud Minister Miri Regev accused Bennett of actually joining the left, saying in an interview with Israel's Army Radio this morning that this new party is imitation Likud. And similarly, former Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, head of the Israel Beitenu party, also dismissed the new party to Army Radio as nothing more than air. Meanwhile, former IDF Chief of Staff Benny Gantz officially launched his own new party Hosen l'Israel, or Israel's Resistance, last week. He's also said to be in talks to run on a joint ticket with Boji Ya'alon as well, former IDF Chief of Staff and former Likud Defense Minister who resigned from his post in 2016, again after disagreements with Netanyahu. Again, though, the issue with all these newly formed fragmented political parties is that now many on the right are concerned that they will not be able to pass the electoral threshold, causing the right to lose its parliamentary majority in the upcoming elections. So will the left finally be able to turn the tides in its favor? Well, that still remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: there is never a dull moment in Israeli politics. Returning now to the studio with more on the changing political landscape ahead of the 2019 elections is Tally Bensimon, a journalist and member of the Likud party. Naftali, it's a pleasure to have you back.
Good evening. I just wanted to mention your last words in your item. There is no dull moment.
There's
so
never a
dull moment
Never.
Here in the Israeli politics.
No.
It's forbidden to sleep in this country.
I'm beginning to see that. But okay, so tell me, with Naftali Bennett and Shaked's new party, Hayamin Hadash, how right-wing is right-wing enough?
Well, it's a hard question. How the right wing is? It's nobody is looking anymore about being a pure right wing. It doesn't work in the Israeli politics.
What does that even really mean?
Center right. Center right, this is the right platform, the right political platform. And Bennett and Shaked decided that this is the right platform for them. Center right, no, not anymore right wing. And the Likud is center right. And
Beit Yehudi is still...
And the Beit Yehudi is searching for his way, but they understood very fast that center right, this is the right slogan for the Israeli politics.
Okay, so now moving to the critics then of this move, who say that, first of all, they're splitting the vote among too many parties now and are weakening the number of mandates likely to be achieved by the right wing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think this is the tragedy of the right here in Israel, the split of the votes. And to remind you, the last election, we lost the right mandates during this election because of the split. So I think more of the same will happen with them. They will take votes from the Likud, they will take votes from the right wing, they will take votes but they will not take votes for the center left or from the left.
So will that give, say Benny Gantz's new party, will that give him a leg up? Is he going to pose even bigger threat to the Likud, perhaps?
No, we cannot make this linkage with the uncertainty of the votes to reflect to Benny Gantz. It's still a big question for me, for us, for the Israeli politics, and I don't think the votes of course, maybe one mandate here, one mandate there, but not the vast majority of the votes will move to Benny Gantz.
So you think in the end we'll still have a right-wing coalition, we'll still have Likud?
60 to 65%, this is the situation. The right wing will form the next government. I hope so, but because we can never know in the election. But just to summarize, I think it's not because the votes of the right wing, it's because the vote of the logic vote. And the logic vote here in Israel goes to the right.
All right, Tally Bensimon, thank you so much for coming in again.
Thank you.
The Israeli political world wasn't the only one with a busy weekend, as Israeli security forces were also addressing multiple threats along the various borders. In the south along the barrier with Gaza, the weekly Hamas-organized March of Return protests resumed on Friday, where despite the storms, around 5,000 Palestinian rioters came to throw rocks, grenades, and otherwise damage the security fence. One man was killed and 6 more were injured when the IDF responded with live fire. Additionally, a group of 10 balloons carrying an explosive landed in a yard of an Israeli kindergarten in Moshav Kfar Maimon near the Gaza border. This is the first such incendiary device flown into Israel from Gaza in a few weeks, and police sappers were called and neutralized the device. Meanwhile, in another first since last month, Hamas also fired a rocket at Israel from the Gaza Strip. No damages or injuries were reported, but the IDF launched an airstrike against a Hamas post in Gaza in response. Finally, in the north along the border with Lebanon, Israel's Operation Northern Shield continues, with the IDF reportedly destroying all 5 Hezbollah attack tunnels that have been found so far crossing into the Israeli Galilee. In video published by the IDF, the tunnels can be seen being collapsed with explosives or filled with an unspecified liquid, mostly cement. But in either case, and especially through the use of the liquid, the actions clearly reveal the hidden entrances to the tunnels from the Lebanese side, and they all begin in civilian Lebanese areas. In one such video released to the public, the entrance was even found to be hidden under a chicken coop, leading the army to once again give this evidence to the international community as proof of Hezbollah's violating UNSC Resolution 1701. Operation Northern Shield is expected to continue at least for the next few weeks. In other news, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has officially started his historic 5-day visit to Brazil. And even though he already met with the newly elected president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, there hasn't been any mention of the embassy move to Jerusalem just yet. And here with more on Netanyahu's trip is ILTV's Latin American correspondent, Joy Gavijon.
Thanks, Aaron. So, as he said, the Prime Minister arrived to the South American country on Friday, joined by his wife Sarah and his son Yair, where he met with the newly elected president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, and other officials for a private meeting that they held at the military fort in the coastal city of Rio de Janeiro.
All right, but until now, they have not spoken on the embassy.
Nothing, exactly. Right after the encounter, the two leaders held a press conference, but there was no word of the embassy move. Instead, they expressed their high hopes for a new brotherhood between the two countries, talking about their plans to increase technological, military, and economic cooperation. Let's take a look at what happened.
It's the first visit by an Israeli Prime Minister to Brazil ever. And it's hard to believe that we had no such contact before, because the brotherhood, the alliance that you mentioned is real and can carry us to great heights. Israel is the promised land. Brazil is the land of promise.
Que for acertado entre nós,
And whatever is
será
aligned
muito
with
bom
us, it will be very
para
good
brasileiros
indeed
e
for
para israelenses.
Brazilians and
E
Israelis.
queremos dizer também para grande parte do mundo,
And we hope also for the rest of
porque
the world,
estamos demonstrando
because we are showing
que essas parcerias
that these partnerships
trazem o bem-estar para os seus povos.
is about well-being to
E queremos que
people.
mais gente faça
And we
parceria com
want
Israel.
people to
All right, well, their words sound promising, at least.
Yes, that's true. There's a lot to expect in terms of cooperation and trade between the two nations. They said that they will be working closely in issues from water technology to security. And even though there were no comments on the embassy move, something that Bolsonaro promised during his campaign, according to an Israeli government source, the embassy move is only a matter of time. And they said that the two leaders did discuss the matter during the meeting.
All right, so it's like basically what happened with the United States when President Trump announced his plan to move the embassy, the American embassy, to Jerusalem, and only did so 6 months after entering office.
Yes. Now, going back to the trip, Netanyahu is set to attend Bolsonaro's inauguration ceremony in Brasilia on January 1st, where he is expected also to meet with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the side to talk about the current situation in Syria. In the meantime, though, the trip hasn't been all business. The Prime Minister also allowed himself a little bit of fun the other day. He was playing soccer in the beach in Copacabana. We saw him having fun and enjoying himself.
All right, well, I can't imagine, how the New Year's celebrations are going to be like over there as well. But from pictures and movies, at least, it looks amazing.
Well, from experience, I can tell you that the Prime Minister is one of the best places in the world to celebrate New Year's. So.
All right, well, that and soccer, I guess. So thanks for the update, Joy.
Of course.
In a win for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, United Kingdom-based international bank HSBC, one of the largest banks in the world, has reportedly decided to divest from Israeli defense contractor Elbit Systems. According to a statement released by the UK Palestine Solidarity Campaign, Palestinian rights activists, including NGO War on Want, had launched a massive year-long campaign holding monthly demonstrations at some 40 bank branches and emailing a petition with over 24,000 signatures, all over concern for the bank's investment in Elbit Systems, as well as other companies selling weapons to Israel's military. And they haven't stopped there. The BDS supporters have said that they vow to continue the campaign since HSBC still maintains business relations with more than a dozen other companies selling weapons and technology to the IDF. Rivka Barnard, a senior campaigner from War on Want, said that, quote, HSBC has taken a positive first step in divesting from Elbit Systems, end quote, which she dubs a notorious manufacturer of weapons and technology used in attacks against Palestinian civilians. She added that, quote, doing business with companies like Elbit means profiting from violence and human rights violations, which is both immoral and a contravention of international law, end quote. Barnard then named additional companies such as Caterpillar and BAE Systems, which she said HSBC continues to do business with. This and other similar statements have indicated that more potential BDS pressure will be placed on the bank. HSBC, on the other hand, has yet to formally announce anything. Famed Israeli author, poet, and journalist Amos Oz has just passed away at the age of 79, reportedly after fighting a bout with cancer, according to his daughter, Fania Oz Salzberger. And Oz, who has sold millions of copies of his 40-something books, translated into dozens of languages, is survived by his wife and 3 children.
כמה יקר וחשוב היית למדינת ישראל, לחברה הישראלית, לעולם הספרות. עיניך הביטו תמיד על העולם ברכות ובחדות גם יחד. עמוק מבפנים ותמיד גם קצת מבחוץ.
Born in Jerusalem in 1939 during the time of the British Mandate, Oz became best known for his literary works, for which he received many prizes. He wrote fiction, nonfiction, short stories, and much more. But he also lived a life full of advocacy for peace in Israel. He was among the first to support a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. He supported the Oslo Accords, and he also even advocated for a divided Jerusalem, though he imagined Jerusalem to be split into many zones: Jewish, Palestinian, Orthodox Christian, Hasidic Jewish, international, and more. He also opposed Israel's settlement expansion policy. But despite seemingly being a voice aligned clearly with the Israeli political left, he also strongly supported Israel's right to self-defense and Zionism as a whole. For example, he was in favor of the West Bank Israeli barrier, but believed it should be closer to the Green Line. Finally, among many other accomplishments, he was also one of the founders of the NGO Peace Now. Even back in 1967, a 28-year-old Oz wrote that, quote, "We should tell the inhabitants of the occupied territories, we do not desire your land. We will sit and rule here until the signing of a peace agreement, a year, a decade, or a generation, and when the day comes, the choice will be yours," end quote. Well, generations have passed, but Amos never gave up the dream, and as a so-called prophet among the cynics, he'll be greatly missed. A strong air force is indispensable as far as a nation's offensive and defensive capabilities are concerned, and today Israel's air force is among the best in the world, with some of the most advanced technology and talented pilots you could ever find. But it didn't start off that way. And joining me now with more on the incredible and adventurous story of how the Israeli Air Force first came to be is Mike Flint, producer of Angels in the Sky. Mike, thank you so much for being with us today.
And thank you for having me here.
It's seriously, it's my pleasure. So tell us a little bit about Angels in the Sky, because I understand this, I recently learned that this is the best-selling book in the Middle East.
Was the best-selling on Amazon.com, and it was also the #1 bestseller on Amazon in the United States.
Incredible. All right, so tell us a little bit about the story, because this is about the 101 Squadron in the Air Force here, the Angels of Death.
Largely the 101 Squadron, but it also talks about the other pilots too. It's not just 101.
Wow.
Of course, 101 I'm personally a little biased to because my dad was a member of 101,
Sure.
and the other squadron, Squadron 35, which is the squadron he led, that squadron.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, but walk us through a little bit of what's in here?
It's a passion project of mine for a very long time. I originally started off wanting to do a documentary. I was very fortunate a few years ago to meet a terrific writer named Robert Gant, who's the author of the book. I collaborated, and I take a little credit for it, but it's Bob. He wrote a fantastic book there. He assimilated all the interviews that we had taken of all the pilots that we still had, and really assembled a story for the ages. And to add how good it is, when I met the Chief of the Air Force, where they honored my dad a couple of weeks ago, he said, "This is the best book I've read," and he's going to make this mandatory reading for all people that go to the Air Force Academy.
Man, wow, that's amazing.
Okay, so that's quite.
So maybe what are some of like the lessons in here that an Air Force, academician might need to see or hear?
I think the biggest thing of all is the David and Goliath, the greatest untold story of the 20th century. I mean, hard to believe, but most Israelis don't even know this. Most people don't know that Israel's Air Force, they had really no planes to speak of. And they had no pilots to speak of. There were a few pilots, I'm not going to deny. There were some crop planes, but their first set of planes, really, their fighter planes, came from Czechoslovakia, which were German Messerschmitts. Of all things, German Messerschmitts were the foundation of the Israeli Air Force.
That's incredible.
And I mean, the imagery, think of the German symbol on the side of the thing, and taking a paintbrush and putting a Star of David over.
It must be there must be some catharsis in that, though.
Yes. Well, I tell you, when some of the pilots first saw the plane, they basically says, "We're not going to fly that plane." That plane literally shot down a friend of mine and killed my ends, and that's the story of the guy who says, "Let's fix this up right away."
Well, and you mentioned this earlier, but your father was a pilot here, and he actually came illegally to fly for Israel.
You've done your homework.
I have done
you have. My dad was a United States Navy pilot. He's still in the Navy. I mean, you've got to put that in perspective, let alone that Israel at the time was basically a country persona non grata. I mean, except for the fact of the UN resolution that basically said Israel exists, there wasn't really a country in the world, I take that Czechoslovakia, there were a handful, but I'm being hyperbole here, that not a country in the world wanted to support Israel. And the pilots, how are you going to create an Air Force when you don't have any pilots?
So thankfully we had people like your dad who
my dad and these volunteers were mensches to an unbelievable degree. The fact that they would be willing to risk their life, their citizenship, and treason.
Well, I couldn't have said it any better. I want to mention before we finish here that there is a movie on the way by the same name, Angels.
Yes, there
Angels
is.
in the Sky.
It's like anything else. It's all about raising the money now. I have a script by Bob Poole and Chris Rare. I've got music in Carol Connors, who wrote the theme song to Rocky. I've got a lot of elements to it, a lot of stars that I'm interested in and directors in it. But it's all about packaging and putting it together and having someone say, "I love this story. I'm going to be the executive producer of that story."
All right, well, I want everybody who's watching right now to check this out, to find the book on Amazon, or to just learn more about the amazing story, Angels in the Sky, themovie.com. Mike, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor. It's really special to be in Israel.
It was my pleasure to host you, really.
Thank you.
2 Roman busts have just been unearthed near Beit She'an, thanks to the alertness of a local resident who spotted one of the busts' heads sticking out of the ground as she was taking a leisurely stroll. According to the Israel Antiquities Authority, after finding the busts, the woman and her husband called the authorities' theft prevention unit, and inspectors were sent to the site to discover the 2 sculptures dating back to the late Roman period, sometime between the 3rd and 4th centuries in the Common Era. The IAA further explained that the busts were finally exposed due to the recent heavy rainfall in the area. Well, after their discovery, the heads were taken to the IAA laboratories to protect them from theft, as well as to further study and preserve them. And according to Dr. Eitan Klein, deputy head of the IAA Theft Prevention Unit, the busts were made of local limestone and they show unique facial features, details of clothing, and hairstyles. And it seems at least one of them depicts a man with a beard. He added that often such busts were placed at the entrance to burial caves and may have represented the image of the deceased. That, and that the busts are in the Oriental style, which shows that, quote, at the end of the Roman period, the use of classical art had subsided and local trends came into vogue, end quote. As for the sculpture's discoverers, the authority will award the woman a good citizenship certificate and is urging all residents to be similarly alert and to call the theft prevention unit should the rain expose any additional archaeological finds. As the 2018 year comes to an end with New Year's literally right around the corner, all the global tourism stats are in, and Israel has broken records again this year, thanks to proper marketing and a few other major factors. And ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh has the details.
Thanks, Aaron. Well, like you said, Israel expects to have a record-breaking year, expecting around 4 million tourists by the end of 2018. Even the Minister of Tourism, Yariv Levin, is excited about it, saying, quote, "I'm excited to welcome next week Israel's 4 millionth tourist in 2018. Now, just to clear this up for you, Aaron, there were about 13% more tourist entries in 2018 than in 2017, making it 38% more than 2016. And to help you compare a little bit, the increase in global tourism has only grown by 4%. So this is huge.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a major jump.
Yeah.
Not that I don't, and again, not that I don't personally, understand why people would want to come and visit this amazing country.
Exactly.
But how did such a big change happen in just a year?
Right. Well, Levine mentioned that the increase in tourism, quote, represents the unprecedented success of the tourism ministry, which invests in marketing Israel around the world. He also went on to mention another factor, saying, quote, this includes the latest agreement signed with the Philippine Minister of Labor to increase the quota of up to 1,000 foreign workers in the hotel sector. So basically all the efforts made over this year and the years before to show Israel from a different side, and having people really coming to visit physically the country, I guess, really paid off. The ministry itself actually invested around 350 million shekels in marketing Israel as a tourism destination around the world. So I'm assuming it had to do something with that.
All right, well, yeah, they're clearly doing an excellent job. People are definitely seeing and understanding why it's important to come visit Israel, not only for the fun aspect of it, but for the cultural and the historical value and religious for those who are interested in that. Okay, so out of curiosity, were most of these new tourists Jewish then? Because again, I just mentioned religion.
Right, exactly. So this may come to a surprise to you, may not, but actually most of the tourists who visited Israel were Christian, with 61% just in 2018 alone. Then around 22% were Jewish, 12 were not affiliated, 1.8 were Muslim, and so on and so forth. There have also been very significant increase in tourists from the United States, France, Russia, Germany, Britain, and China. So it's pretty much all over.
All right, well, honestly, this makes me so happy. I'm definitely eager to see what type of jump we'll make in tourism next year, if these numbers were so promising already, and hopefully they'll continue. So I can't wait to see who the 4 millionth tourist is also, by the way.
Me too.
Thanks for the update, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
Over 5 years after signing the initial agreements, the Israeli government is finally now approving a Jordanian-Israeli joint project to create a canal that links the Red and the Dead Seas. According to a Hadashot television news report on Friday, when Prime Minister Netanyahu returns from Brazil next week, the cabinet is set to approve the deal to fund $40 million towards the project over the next quarter century. The decision to vote on the deal after years of being tied up in bureaucracy comes after a meeting in New York between Israeli and Jordanian officials, and Likud member and regional cooperation minister Tzachi Hanegbi, who was there in the meetings in New York, said that, quote, the Red Sea-Dead Sea Canal will enable Jordan to deal with its water troubles, allow us to work towards saving the Dead Sea from drying up, and most importantly, to strengthen the peace between us and an Arab state that maintains a peace agreement with Israel, end quote. Up until now, however, red tape in the government, an unwillingness to fund the budget, environmental objections, and political issues all between the two countries has stopped its progression. Well, if approved, the deal will establish a desalination plant in Jordan, which will separate salt water into drinkable water and brine, and the drinkable liquids will then flow towards Jordan, while the brine will flow into the Dead Sea in an attempt to replenish its hyper-salty waters. And throughout the whole process, the flow will also go through water turbines to produce much-needed electricity. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Now that a deal with Jordan to connect the Red Sea and the Dead Sea is finally coming underway, today's word just has to be te'ala, meaning a canal. Now, a te'ala, or a canal, usually refers to a man-made waterway between two larger bodies of water, like HaTe'alat Panama or the Panama Canal. And while te'alot, or canals, are often used for travel, shipping, trade, and more, the Red Sea-Dead Sea te'ala will do so much more than that. In addition to connecting the two seas in efforts to save them from ever-dropping water levels, the planned te'ala, or canal, will also host a water turbine and a desalination plant, bringing energy and fresh water to thousands in need. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy and cool with scattered showers and a low of around 54 or 12 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow you can expect partly cloudy skies and very little change in temperatures. The high should be about 63 or 17 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.76 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you so much for watching.